Hi, my name is Sangita Kumar, and I'm the CEO and founder of Be the Change Consulting. Join me in Liberated AF, the workplace revolution. This is a podcast where we get to explore what does it take to become the organization that we want to work for. So what is that? The organization I want to work for, it supports my humanity and makes me feel like I belong. It's a place that isn't racist, it isn't extractive. It works for the boomers and the Gen Alphas. There's space for everyone to bring their genius to work. Don't we want to become that? And don't we want to create that? So I have been studying organizational dynamics for over 20 years, and I love working with teams stuck in an entrenched challenge to bring clarity to diverse perspectives and look for ways that human-centered systems. We're going to tell stories, we're going to answer questions, we're going to offer strategies on this podcast. Together, we are going to become something new. Let's go.
Hey, Sangita.
Hi, Fongy.
How goes it?
Oh my God, it's so good. It's Monday morning. I'm sitting in a deep sunlight patch and I'm talking to you all my favorite things to start a week.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I was sitting and noodling on all the different types of thoughts that was coming up from listening to our past podcasts, because I can definitely see that there are themes that are naturally coming up. And I still have yet to find a spicy name for this episode because I'm so long-winded and it's too wordy. So maybe towards the end we can find one collectively together. But in this episode, I really want to pick your brain on around the leader's role in this equity work. So as we've mentioned in many of our episodes, we talk about leaders who are charged with the equity initiative, and at times they have resources and at times that they don't. I mean, we've unpacked that. In this particular episode, I want to talk about what if the leader's not clear if their role is to disrupt the system or to protect it. Does that make
Oh my
sense?
God. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, that's like such a good polarization, right?
Oh, yeah.
Protecting the system or disrupting it. Yeah, it's gripping. Okay, so then when does that happen? I guess if I'm thinking about those two words, I think it's often like where that might happen is if I as a leader, and this has actually happened to me, where I'm like, oh, we're gonna talk about our we did this last year. We usually pick like some aspect of our team culture, and then we are like, let's explore this from a liberatory perspective over the course of the year. So let's say last year we looked at our vacation policy, our time off, right? Our time off benefit, vacation, sick, and like how people are sort of like, working remotely, and like, can you be in Portugal and like be working a couple hours a day and still be working, or do you have to take vacation, right? So we were just kind of like, how could we do this in a different way? And in my perspective, I'm often when we're choosing a project like that, I'm in my mind, I don't know that I say this out loud, but I might say we're talking about like a 10 to 20% change in whatever we decide to do, because I'm also running this organization. I know that we're not going to stop the rest of our work to do like we're not going to spend a whole week doing literature reviews and studying other countries' vacation policies and the impact, right? We're not going to do all of that work. We sort of are like, in my mind, we have other work, which is what keeps us funded and keeps the lights on and gets us paid. And we want to explore these like the benefits that we have that help us do our work, but no one's actually paying us to do that. And so we don't have a ton of, especially in our organization, we're small, right? We don't have a ton of unrestricted funds that just pays for people's time. And so just because I'm holding the budget like that, I'm not thinking we're going to dismantle the entire time off vacation policy, get rid of our time, the Paychex partner people who actually track all of that data. Right. So I'm like, oh, we're gonna make a couple of agreements and like,
right. So even within that, you are you started off by wanting to disrupt the systems of an organization can look like for us to build collective rest. But simultaneously, it sounds like, as you were talking, you're also trying to protect the system at the same time too, because
Right.
of resources, time, and what I heard there too is, yeah, we're not being funded to be able to do this research on ensure that how we can find our new vacation policy. So a little bit
Right.
of disrupting and protecting right there.
Yeah. Right. And it feels good as you're saying it, right? As you're saying that back to me, like the way I talked about it at first, it feels more liberatory. Let's disrupt and analyze and, interrogate and dismantle. And then when I'm like, oh wait, but only to the extent that we can keep doing the rest of our work the way we've already planned for it to go. And like we can't like get into a bunch of fights and like now have like, we don't get along because we've had these rich but provocative conversations about time and rest and wellness, and they're personal, and we don't all think the same, and we don't all have the same privileges, we don't all have the same identities. Those conversations could get hairy and dicey really quickly. So I'm also trying to protect like our relationships. I care about everybody on this team, but I also want us to be able to do our primary work together, which is, why I want good teamwork. Yeah. So like right there, right? That could be in my from my perspective, what am I disrupting? What am I protecting shows up. And I can totally see how for a team member who doesn't hold the budget immediately, right? So as soon as you tell me you're going to talk about like policies or procedures or structures, I am holding in my mind the budget and what other things are connected to the idea of time off. It's not a standalone thing to me. But if I start talking to my team about it, I don't know where their mind goes, right? We're not all holding the same, we're not all sitting at the same place. And so I think it would make a ton of sense that someone who, right, from that position is like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I want for my body and what feels good for me. And this is my chance. No one has ever asked me about like designing a time off policy. I'm not holding any constraints in my mind. I'm just going to tell you what I want. And so that like, now we're coming from two different perspectives, right? One person who's just sort of grounded in what they want, and the other person who's grounded in what seems possible, which, right, what is possible to me is connected to what I've already experienced, what I understand about the budget, my own risk aversion, and like what I need in terms of my own self-care. And so what I think is possible, right? My role as a leader gets to become conflated or overlapped with all of the things that I personally want as a human being. And I can easily project this idea of like, oh no, these are constraints. We can't do those things. When maybe it's just, I don't want to do those things, or I don't even want to consider those things. Right. And so now the clash between me and the rest of the team, you can write that movie. You can sort of see where that foreshadowing is happening.
Well, I was in that movie with you.
Do you remember that?
I was in that movie with you, and as you were playing back your experience, I was thinking about the different perspective I held throughout the years, based on, I don't know, I think I held different roles. I was exposed. I had different perspective. And so if I can think about way back when I started the organization and I was only 10 hours a week, we often joke that I was your executive assistant. Um, and had you asked me at that time, had we had that conversation um, early on in the organization, I for sure would be thinking of all those things at 10 hours a week, all the things I would want for our vacation policy, right? I wasn't even there part-time, 10 hours a week. And I'm reflecting on through the years as my roles changed, of course I started working more. I saw it a bit more clearly because in proximity to working with you and the budget and knowing, yeah, I want all these things too, but um, it's not something that can just happen without the work and the resources. So I think with those perspective, it would shift from where I would think that you are, someone who's a liberatory leader versus a leader who is just doing the liberatory talk. So I'm kind of
Mm,
just reflecting on my experience on that.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So what I think you can do then, right, just from our own experiences and our progression with all of that, is one to know that like um setting a goal like that with your team, I think is like it's a great way to create an ongoing organizational cultural, like a cultural practice that we reflect on, liberatory structures. And I think being able to choose one sort of almost casually with your team, um, versus like going through a whole big strategic planning process. If you have that culture where you can sort of just choose, that also I think it takes down like this kind of work requires so much process steps and the care, and attention to how people are showing up and how fast are we asking people to move and what have we invited people, like what how much have we trained people in how to think and how to talk so that we are aligning in how we are collaborating, right? And that happens on all sides, right? Whether you're looking at like racial identities, how to talk, how to listen. If you're talking about positionality, how do I talk, how do I listen, right? It's dual capacity building on both sides. Because this work requires so much of that, sometimes like I think reducing the rigor on the choice making, right? The choosing of a practice or a process, if we can save our energy labor, our labor points on that side, you're always gonna need it in the actual implementation, the grappling, the debating, the practicing, the exchange. That is the liberatory practice, the muscles that we're trying to build. It's just as important as getting to the outcome. It's also like how are we going to arrive there? So yeah, so I think if we can one make some choices that feel like take a little bit less energy and not overthink it, right? Like you could in a team process sort of create like very easily a set of projects that you want to explore that over 10 years. So picking one, right? And not picking like not saying we're going to transform all of our people processes. Instead to say we're going to look at one people process, which is onboarding. And we're going to look at the life cycle of how people come into this organization, how they grow and evolve in the organization, how they are protected and sustained in the organization, and then how they transition out of the organization. So if you make yourself a little story that's like, we're going to go on a life cycle journey and we're going to start at orientation, and then you just start practicing with your group. What do you need what did you need when you came into this organization? What information did you feel like was available to you? What wasn't? How did you build relationships with people? Right? So like short conversations that then start to like end in small, simple decisions. And if you're looking at orientation as an example, maybe there are people who like joined the organization in the past year that you could say, okay, we're gonna go back and like do some better community building and orienting and aligning with those people. So making the decisions a little quickly, looking for like some conversations that like lead to some simple decisions that you can start practicing right away, and like rolling change so that it doesn't feel like, oh, we plan, we grapple and debate, we spend this whole process like making a decision, and now we're so exhausted from the planning process that we kind of don't have anything left for implementation. The implementation is where we need the energy. So that's my thought.
The bite-size breakdown of the liberatory process to practice, that makes sense. And when I'm trying to think that that process seems slow as you're offering, so don't do it with a big strategic plan. Find something, be able to identify the thing that you want to work on as a team, a common goal. I imagine that while going through, if you're practicing, you're going through these liberatory process, there's going to be different ways in which people show up. So I imagine, as I explained earlier, where my experience is based on my role in the organization, where I might be someone who would be really excited about the idea, I'm championing it, or I might be holding resistance. And we know that when people are holding any any level of feelings is because there's a value or a need of theirs that they're holding near and dear. Have you noticed that in groups as you've taken them through or coached them through these bite-sized liberatory process and seeing how the group dynamic plays out?
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think there's people show up in all different ways. And like we were talking about, like the dual capacity building, I think
Yeah.
it also makes sense that individuals might need some coaching, right?
Mhm.
About how to actually engage. Okay, so one kind of very simple like um assessment, that I like to run is when I'm looking at like when we're consulting with an organization or I'm thinking about my own team, like usually about a third of the group, if we imagine a third, right? And the numbers might break out differently. But you've got a third of the people in any like equity conversation that are like, I'm so excited. I'm so enthusiastic. I want to be a part of this, right? You and I together, we might have been these champions, right? If we were working on a team, which means we're like, I'll attend an extra meeting. Like this matters so much to me. I get the work. I understand that it's not going to be paid. I understand that there's going to be like a labor of love and kind of a passion tax that gets placed on me. Right. So champions are like they'll go the extra mile and they're looking to like they feel enthusiastic that it means something to them. Right. So that's champions. And then there's like the middle part of that spectrum, which tends to be people who are kind of like have more apathy, right? They're kind of like, I'm not against you, but I'm not really like gonna fight for this or work on this. I have other priorities, but go for it, right? So I'll be hands off, but you're right. I won't hurt. I won't necessarily help. So that's like kind of the middle. And then you've got these active detractors, right? Who are people who are like, um, I don't like this doesn't feel fair. This feels anti status quo. This feels like you're coming for the people who have more tenure or people who are racially white. Um, so they're feeling more attacked and they feel like, oh, there's a group of people that while you're trying to center this other group, you are coming for, you know,
Mhm.
a different
Mhm.
group, right? So they're protectors of the status quo. And so I think, and you're in a process like this, if you kind of have a sense of like, okay, who's in my group, you might be able to pull people aside to give them some coaching, right? So if I see someone who is in that like active champion place, but they're getting super angry with the people who are like
Yes.
slower, who need more time, who maybe they're in active conflict with the detractors, right? That's what those detractors want. That there's like an active fight and that fight becomes distracting inside of an organization. If we're like on the streets, and we're like advocating for something like for as an organizer from that organizer mentality, that activist mentality, we might be able to support like, active conflict. But inside an organization, that kind of active conflict, it goes very counter to how
Yeah.
organizations work, right? If you and I got into like a big screaming match in a meeting, it's going to impact the other people who are in that meeting. It's going to impact people's ability to trust us as we're leading other sections of our work.
Sure.
And so with people who are like super passionate like that, a coaching move I might offer to them is to say like we need to use the fact that you are a champion and that you have staying power. I need you to be kind of like the voice of reason, the voice of rationale, like extend your energy as a champion of this work and a protector of this work, but not in like actively escalating conflict, because that ultimately doesn't work, right? Especially in a large group. And there might be times where we need the voice of that champion in the large group to help as the facilitator to help sort of like open something up. But there is like a nuance and an art to how that gets named. It's not aggressive, that aggressive fighting. It's more of like asking open-ended questions and saying, I'm curious how this came to be, or I thought we already agreed on this, and it seems like you're moving us backwards in a decision that was already made. So more like facilitative moves
Yeah.
that help move the conversation along. So that's what I might say to the champions. To those in the middle people, like I think there it's like we need to hear examples of your stories and your experiences. Where have you seen this work for you or for other people? Where have you seen it not work for you or other people? So getting them to share experiences that doesn't feel to them like they have to take a political stance or that they're kind of risking their staying power, their belonging power in the organization. Usually that group, it's like they want to play it safe and they're not sure what the risk entails. And, whatever I think about that, if I know that that's what's there, then we have to meet that need.
Yeah.
So, right, figuring out ways for them to participate that doesn't activate their sense of threat, right? And then I think for those detractors, those active detractors, it is sometimes, I think it takes like some strategic timing, right? So sometimes I want to pull those people aside one-on-one and just to say like, hey, it doesn't seem like you're championing this work legitimately. And if you're not, I'm going to ask you to just stay away from it. Let us build a proof of concept and we'll pitch it back to you. We want your thinking if it's not going to work, but I can't have somebody who doesn't believe in it ideologically sabotaging the way the group is moving us forward.
So that is really good, but that sounds really hard.
Yeah. It's tough to say, and I think you can say it. I can say it as a consultant, right? So
Sure.
that's kind of why you bring in a consultant to be
Yeah.
able to say things that maybe you feel like you personally can't as somebody's boss or supervisor. But if you do have positional power over that person, then I also think you get to say like, hey, the way we want participation in these meetings or in these spaces is is supportive critique. So if you're going to tell us something doesn't work, you need to tell us what will work. You don't just get to critique the idea. So I can still like coach how the behavior that I want to see. And if the behavior is I want you to sit out because you've proven that you don't know how to engage in a collaborative way, or I'm going to coach you in how I expect you to collaborate. And I'm going to really hold you accountable to that. What you can't do is just let that bad behavior like keep showing up. That is that's demoralizing to everybody else and nobody else is going to want to be in that space.
And that's probably why the champion, I like the breakdown. And also there are different ways in being, especially with the champions. I think that when you were describing the champions who have to be a little bit more vocal, is probably because they think that's the only way they can be to be able to silence the detractors. But by giving them other ways in which holding that facilitative leadership, that's going to be more expansive and potentially make the space much more safe for the folks who are in the middle trying to figure it out. And it definitely, if they're trying to hold their own safety and belonging, their security in the organization, they're probably going to be more willing to open up, not necessarily having to take this political stance. And I think with the active detractors, they're detractors because there's something that they're disagreeing with, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree, but to disrupt. And so I feel like the strategies that you're offering is helping the collective group have more agreement on how to be. Now, you gave examples and you did mention that if you are a person in positional power, you can say these things, or if you're an external consultant, it's much easier. Now, what if you're running this work, you are a leader, but you're at the same level as these active detractors? Like, what are some moves that you can pull out? Because as we know, there's a lot of folks who's doing this work and it's their peers that are in the same space with them.
Yeah, that's a great question. So then I think you have to move to, if you don't have positional power, right? There's 3 powers we can talk about in moving equity work forward. There's relational power, right? So you could go up to someone and be like, hey man, don't do me dirty like that in a meeting, right? The way you were talking, like I felt very attacked and I felt very disrespected and we're friends. Like you could have said exactly what you were saying, but in a different way. You didn't need to use it like that, right? So that is like me appealing, not to say that what you said was wrong, but like I can't hold it the way you came, the way you were talking. Like, don't do me like that, right? So in whatever language is indigenous to your body, right? That's one way to say that. Then that's relational. Then there's facilitative. Facilitative power could be like me saying, okay, it sounds like there's 2 perspectives in the room. The equity committee put this objective forward, and I'm hearing this person from executive leadership is now critiquing or asking questions about the goal itself. I'm not sure this is the right place for us to continue this debate. Right. So that is what I could say as the facilitator. I'm hearing these two competing ideas. I'm telling you where they came from, and I'm naming the positionality of where those perspectives live. And I'm saying, I don't think we should keep having this conversation. Now, if I feel like I don't mind facilitating it, I might say, I don't mind listening to us go back and forth for another 5 to 7 minutes. And then I think we're going to need to make a call on how to move it forward. Or if this is actually feeling not productive, if it feels productive, right? If it's productive to sort of hear the different perspectives and I can neutralize them as they're coming out, right? Even though people are saying them maybe with a charge, if I'm listening and I'm like, okay, it sounds like you're worried about A, B, and C, right? So I know that what I can do as the facilitator is actually allow divergent perspectives to emerge, name them in a non-confrontational way, and then give us enough space that we can step back and look at them strategically rather than from an activated place. So if I'm like, oh, that actually is a good thing for the group, let me do that. Right. So I might still narrate that is what I'm doing. So that's the facilitative power, to narrate what choices I'm making and why, and then to give it a time limit. Right. So I might say, we're going to go for 10 more minutes here. And then Fong, as the leader in this group, I'm going to ask you where you think we should go. So I'm giving you a heads up that you have 10 minutes to decide. And if you want to say, I don't know, it's not up to me, then I would say, then who is it up to? So I'm going to keep holding you accountable to make the decision of how we move it forward, because it's not my decision, right? So the thing about the facilitator power is that we're getting very clear what is in my locus of control. I can usually name process. I can't push a decision. I can't hold someone accountable that doesn't report to me, right? Because I don't have positional power. So then the third power is that positional power. And so the positional power is the person who's like, it's that person's job to always be tracking what were the core objectives. Are we going towards the objectives, or are we coming away from them? And are we breaking the organization through this debate, right? Is it healthy, productive struggle, or is it just destructive and like combative struggle that we're not going to be able to come back from? And so the leader's job is to be attending to like the vibe and the climate, whether I'm the facilitator or not. Does that make sense?
Those are good. I think you gave me the name to this episode, Flexing Your Facilitative Power. And yeah, it makes sense. And also, you're also pulling from a lot of your own understanding of the group dynamics, the tensions that's in the space, and you're bringing it into the space. You're not hiding from it. So that's super helpful. Do you want to put in a plug real quick for our facilitation sessions that we have in our public trainings? Because a lot of the moves that you're sharing right now, I've seen you do in real time in those sessions.
Oh yeah. Well, our facilitation trainings that are in our public training calendar, they're virtual. So people attend from all over the globe, actually.
Yeah.
It's been really exciting. We get to hear like lots of these international perspectives. And we have 3 different facilitation training topics, and in each one we kind of go over some moves, and then we kind of hold a clinic space. So people try things out themselves. We model some moves. And a lot of it is we're figuring it out. So it's like, it feels like a clinic. So there's some of it where we're like, oh, I've done that before. Here's what I tried. But as everybody knows, facilitation is not about expertise, right? It's about like practice, relationships, putting ourselves out there, and like being open to the emergence. And so it's a fun place for everyone to collaborate.
Yeah, it'd be really cool if we can see some of y'all in there. And we would love to hear what you think of this episode and that you continue to flex your facilitative powers. We hope that you're able to take away something from today's episode. And until the next time, y'all, thanks. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
We hope this conversation provided helpful insight and inspired you to create a more inclusive and liberated workplace. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. Your support makes a huge difference in helping us reach more listeners like you. We love to hear your thoughts on today's topic. Connect with us on social media and drop a comment. You can find all the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.